of you are top executives. It's, you know, the world has become, as I always say, a global village where we are traveling and moving all the time. We spend a lot of time in the aircrafts and the airplanes and the airports. And in India, the country is so vast, and frankly, your work goes across the country. So even internally, if you're in India, you're always traveling. So it's really, really hard to find the senior people, you know, kind of lock in a day for us or a session for us. And we're really grateful to be able to build that kind of a rapport and relationship with several dignitaries and very senior people in the country who make it a point to keep their commitments. Why did India liberalize? I gave you a snapshot yesterday saying that we had a problem. We had a serious financial crisis, more of the foreign exchange crisis in the early 90s, and so there was no other option but to liberalize.
We constantly have a flow of people who come in and see what is happening in India. And again, I say it's a strange market. We have a situation where Tata introduces a car for the equivalent price of 1800 euro, and they make 100,000 cars and sell it in less than a year, or a little over a year. At the same time, we have Mercedes selling 150 cars in one go in a small town somewhere in western India. So the growth seems to be firing on all cylinders. Today, as I stand before you, last week the government of India listed what was India's largest IPO. It was a coal IPO, Coal India. They raised $3.5 billion. It was 39 times oversubscribed, and it's a government of India company. Now all of us were sitting back and saying, wow, look at the size of this IPO. Government announced that they're going to do an even larger IPO in the next month on Indian Oil Corporation, where they plan to raise $4.2 billion. I'll share with you a small anecdote. Somebody in my family makes toys, and as part of his business, he also distributes children's products which they import. And he had a European company, and let the company be unnamed. He had a European company come here to bring color pencils and promote their brand in India. So they told him, why don't you organize a coloring contest through the city of Bombay, and we will give free color pencil sets to the children who come into color. So it was done over a weekend, and it was done across all the malls in India. In that one weekend, they gave 30,000 sets of color pencils. The marketing manager came in and said he hasn't given that many color pencils in Europe in a year. So that is just the scale of the opportunity over here. Industrial licensing was cut, leaving only in 18 industries subject to licensing. Industrial regulation was rationalized, abolishing the controller of capital issues, which decided the prices and number of shares that the firms could issue. Introducing the SEBI Act, which is the Securities and Exchange Act of India. Started a national stock exchange, which is a computer-based trading system. And the last bullet, being the most important, reduced tariffs from an average of 85% to 25%, and they rolled back quantitative controls. The rupee was also made convertible on the trade account. It is still largely convertible only on the trade account. There was, for the first time, a concept of automatic approval given. So if you wanted to make certain investments, you didn't need to go to the government, you just were approved to make those investments. The way they controlled it was that they still do have you make filings with the Reserve Bank of India. And these are filings that are made post the investment. So suppose you want to set up a subsidiary in India in the software phase. What happens is that you go ahead and make the investment. When the money comes in, you just inform the Reserve Bank of India that I have received so much money from so and so for. So it's not an easy regulatory landscape, but state governments also fell in line. what is happening with the Chinese government in Africa. Indian industry is doing as entrepreneurs go to Africa. So we had the story where an Indian entrepreneur bought out the largest telecom network in Africa. I've had small manufacturers, a guy who makes Tupperware in India, went to Africa, and he says that if he's growing 20% in India, he's growing about 60 to 70% in Africa. And he's grown so fast, and I said, what do you do? Do you just take your old molds from here and use them in Africa? And he says, no, I design new products, I design new this, and what he was doing, talking about going public in India, he now says that maybe I should take my, roll my India business into Africa and go public in Africa.
So many versions of India amongst Indians, forget amongst the international audience, that yet there's no one story. So let me start by saying that India is a land of contrast, and I think on that everybody agrees. We have a modern India. We're sitting in a hotel which I believe could be in most parts of the world, and we have a very traditional Orthodox India. We have the best educated persons here, and we have a very large number of people who are undereducated. Most retail starts off with margins of 60% upwards. In Europe, it's 75% upwards before the discounting. We start in the low 40s. And the idea there is to try and keep the prices sharp so we get more volume, and that directly gets more jobs. So we know in many cases we can price much higher, but then the demand will be less and therefore less jobs. So there's a direct link there. We believe in intrinsic value of the product, that we're not selling a label. Fabric products do not have a label in the front. We don't, what you're buying is what you're seeing in the product. A bit of a lifestyle statement for many people. Wearing a Fabindia product, it's almost like what somebody told me was reverse snobbery. It's buying a product which is affordable and not worrying about the label. And we have products across all age groups. Part of our supply range includes garments, which is our biggest product line. Home products, where we have a range of products for the home, from curtains to tableware. Furniture, which is something which has become one of our fastest growing. It fits in with the range because it's what we deal in furniture is only pure wood. A lot of people are going into blends and various other things. We have a range of personal care products, which is a small line, but the difference is that these products are made using authentic natural ingredients. And then organic foods, which again is a small but growing market in India, and jewelry. Again, there we're not competing with the mainstream jewelers, we're looking at craft-based jewelry coming from the similar supply chain. So what do we, just to sum it up, we're natural, we're craft-based, we're contemporary and affordable. Typically that's what describes the Fabindia product. And the last line, very, very important, we keep reminding ourselves, source in a responsible and sustainable manner.
In 2002, sort of the world changed, and the world changed driven by one company. A lot of rules, policies, because this was presented to the policy school. I had to talk a little bit about the policy changes that had happened along the way in terms of deregulation, in terms of breaking the country up into smaller pieces, operating areas, and then policy changes happened along the way. But in 2002, two things happened. One was Reliance came into the country, and two was they changed a rule, a simple rule, which was the calling party, instead of the calling, the receiving party had to pay for the phone call if somebody called you. So people used to switch off their phones before. and they used to switch it on only to make a call and then switch it off again. So essentially it was not a meaningful way of communicating. But in 2002 they changed the rule to say that the calling party pays. So people started keeping their phones on a lot more. So phone calls started terminating a lot more, revenues increased. I figured out how to buy things cheap. I was at Reliance, I know how they priced, how they bought things, how they bought everything, including a glass of water. They would negotiate it down to a level where it is really, really cheap. Same glass of water that you would buy outside versus inside, and it is going to be cheaper because they used their muscle as a buyer, as a collective buyer for 100 million subscribers. I think that bargaining power changes how things are priced over here. Some good business model innovation. A lot of companies have outsourced their towers. Towers are now owned by different companies. They are no longer with the operators. Four of the big operators have outsourced their IT to IBM. I'm there. The others have outsourced one each to one of the other SIs. Right? Our Reliance was the only operator who did not outsource, and I was running that for 4 or 5 years. I was running the IT and we had not outsourced. They have a vertical, their whole business mindset is of vertical integration. They will, if they have to build this hotel and if they realize they have to build 20 hotels, you can bet that a company like Reliance would actually go and buy a carpet factory, a wood factory, a tile factory, and they will stitch the whole thing together till they finish making all the hotels in 10 years. And then they'll sell off all those assets. So they get their raw materials quite cheap. So it's a very different way of thinking about how to go about doing large projects and getting a good price for that. Since we are on telecom, so about 20% of the towers, of telecom towers in the country, run completely on diesel only because there is no power in those places. They run 100% of the time on diesel generators. Now, it's just not economical to run a telecom network where your customers are paying you $4 to $6 to run, and maybe there are only probably 10 customers in that village, but you have to run the tower. You have to run the tower, and it costs that much in diesel every hour, leave alone every month. So, the cost of operating these towers are still high, so there are ways that are being thought through in terms of sharing, and sharing of towers is happening, and we will see some more of that happening in the future. So new business models are required to convince the customers to pay more for the services, which again is happening again. Competition is not widespread. There's a lack of trust in the industry. Lack of trust. Now this might sound, these big business houses don't trust each other. People are not cooperating with each other to get a better, efficient country. The road in front of Reliance, when you go, it took them about 3 years to build. You will say, why did it take 3 years to build a road which is roughly about 10 kilometers, maybe less, yeah? But there was no other road to divert the traffic. How did you build a road while you are on that road? And this is the problem across the entire country. How do you build it while you are on it? How do you transform it while you are on it? How do you change everything while you are in the system? Right? So it's very easy to build a separate road, a greenfield. A greenfield airport that gets done in no time. We do very good greenfield projects, but this country is a living, breathing, 10% growing economy. You can't stop it to do something better. You have to figure out ways in which you are going to improve this while you're on it. And that is a huge learning, which at least I have got working here for the last 5 years, of how to keep thinking of ways to do things in the system while you're on the system. And that's